Welcome back, everybody. This is episode 29 of the Next Generation of Superstars podcast. We are very fortunate and grateful to have Malcolm Lemmons here, who is the founder of the Hype Report. He's originally from Washington, D.C. He was a former professional athlete turned entrepreneur, author, and speaker. And he also is a LinkedIn top voice and now a contributor also at Boardroom. So glad to have you on the show.
Appreciate the opportunity. Great to be here, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So kind of growing up, how did you really, start off your career and finding your passion for just the love of the game of basketball?
Yeah. So growing up in DC, I mean, it's a hotbed for hoops talents. I played with guys such as, Kevin Durant, Michael Beasley, Quinn Cook, Victor Oladipo. So I played against a lot of guys who played in the league. And so it was just a high level of basketball. And I knew early on that that was something I wanted to pursue. So, going to one of the top Catholic high schools in the area and in the country, we played on national level and a lot of, across the country, a lot of different, nationally ranked teams. And that just kind of propelled my drive and my focus and my passion for the game. So it was really just having that competitive nature and then being around the talent that really just propelled me to want to play at the highest level possible.
That's awesome. No, it's incredible. And I think even though being around that also kind of, showed you to be, you want to become a better version of yourself on the court, right? Because you're playing against other talent and you want to really push yourself to be better. Speaking on top of that, has there been any important mentors or coaches along the way as you really started to sharpen your craft and skills in the game?
Yeah, 100%. I would say that one of the people who really had a huge influence on me growing up, especially when it came to basketball, was Kevin Durant's godfather. So I used to work out with him religiously every weekend and go down to the rec center and spend the whole weekend there just perfecting my craft, trying to get better. And being there, learning from him and just seeing the kind of talent that kind of came through, under his wing and under his mentorship. It was just amazing to have that opportunity to have somebody like that kind of teach you the game. And he was a big reason as to why I was able to play at the Division I level, because I tell people all the time, I was never the most talented basketball player on any of my teams past middle school. I was probably the third or fourth leading scorer on every team I played on, but I was the guy who was willing to put in the dirty work, to work hard
Right.
and kind of do the things that other players weren't willing to do, and kind of learning the game from him, and then also kind of combining that with that work ethic and that drive. That was really just what allowed me, I think, to play at the professional level. Because, as I said before, it wasn't really my skill set.
Yeah, no, but it's incredible just to see that there's a lot of life lessons that you can take away from that game and to be able to apply that and now you being an entrepreneur, but it's just incredible to see what you can learn on the court and how that translates to everything else besides playing basketball. And so what were some of those key lessons and skills that you developed from basketball that still help you today right now?
Oh man, everything. Everything from like the consistent effort, just like putting in the work every day, just being disciplined with that,
Yep.
to being, a good teammate and being able to work with people from different backgrounds and different experiences, than you come from. And things such as like just the patience that it takes to be, a high level athlete, and how that takes just years of consistent and persistent grinding. So all those different
Right.
intangibles and traits that you kind of gain through sports are applicable in life and in business. And so all those things that, in hindsight, I learned from sports are directly like things that I directly apply in my everyday life now. And a lot of like who I am as a person and how I operate on a daily basis, it comes from being an athlete my entire life. So there's so much that you can learn as far as just life lessons from sports and stuff that I talk about all the time, is like having athletes understand the opportunity that you have at hand and how do you leverage everything that you're learning as an athlete into that next career, into whatever else you want to do in life.
100%. No, that's very well said, and I think it's so important because not a lot of athletes realize it right away, and when you can start to see that, like all these skills that they've been applying to on the court, now they can actually use that in other aspects, whether it's in work or personal life or relationships. And I think that kind of leads into what I was going to ask you next, Malcolm, is as an athlete entrepreneur, how did you effectively transition after your career? And I think that's a lot of it's a hot topic right now because a lot of both male female athletes are when they're done with their career, they want to be able to see, okay, what is my brand identity, what can I be doing off the court that I love and I'm passionate about, and can represent. And so what really helped you have that effective transition?
This is a great question. I think now it's a lot easier than when I was playing. There wasn't people talking about this. There wasn't content out there of like, how do you transition in life after sports? What's like, what does that next step look like for athletes? And so I think, since the days that I've been playing, or stopped playing, the narrative has changed a lot. And we have examples of athletes who are doing things during their careers, which in turn helps them when they're transitioning. Athletes who are entrepreneurs, who are creatives, who are investors. And so those examples are helping the next generation understand what is possible and that whole like athlete and movement. And so for me personally, it was a struggle, but being an overseas basketball player, you have a lot of time on your hands outside of the court. And so for me, it was a lot of like exploration and really trying to figure out what I'm passionate about, what I'm interested in ways that I can just try different things and figure out what's going to stick. And so while I was overseas, I started to get into writing. And that was really when I started to find that passion and that love for just being a creator. And that was really what propelled me into everything that I'm doing now. It was like having that willingness to try different things. And if it didn't work out, move on to the next thing. And so I think that's very important for athletes to understand is that trial phase, it's going to take time for you to make the transition and it's not going to be comfortable. And you just got
Right.
to have this willingness to try as many things as possible and figure out what's right for you. And if it doesn't work out, you can always go to the next thing, but you gotta try. And so that was really how it started for me, just getting into content creation, understanding this was something I like, and then figure out, how I can create opportunities based off of that.
100%. Yeah, I mean that's just and on all levels, it's so so proper because it's like a lot of people that they get scared of trying different things, and I think you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable and taking that risk and trying something. You can always pivot, you can always adjust and adapt, and that's just so true because a lot of times we when we get into the real world or do a different job and we're not passionate about what we're doing, we don't know where to go and what direction to look. And I was kind of going into what I was going to ask you next is I'm reading, your most recent book, Impact Beyond the Game, and you discuss the importance of athletes taking control of their brand. And we talked about this with brand identity, but now talking about with NIL era and everything that's going on with young athletes, really trying to take the focus of their brand and have more control of that. How can athletes start creating their own brand identity at such an early age and really be able to build off that and have that discipline to make it work?
I think, athletes nowadays are digitally native. They're growing up with the phone at the fingertips. They're understanding social media and how all of that works. And so I don't think it's as much about creating a brand identity at a young age as it is more of just exploring. Going back to like what I said before about like what are you
Right.
interested in? What type of content do you like creating? Is it TikTok videos? Is it writing for Medium or creating tweets? Is it posting pictures on Instagram? So figuring out what medium you think works best for you and the type of topics that you like talking about, whether that's like fitness or some type of teaching or even comedic videos and skits like that. Like there's all different types of niches you can kind of figure out or explore. But it's really not so much about the strategy when you're a young athlete as it is just doing what feels right. And so I think having that
Yep.
intuition and following the stuff that you're interested in is extremely important early on. And as you go along your career and you start to form a more of an identity and people start to get to know you and you build those relationships outside of your sport, then it's more about being a little more strategic and trying to figure out, well, how do I leverage this content to have opportunities, whether that's like sponsorships, brand deals, a clothing line, a podcast. And so early on, it's just about putting yourself out there and really just being creative. And as you go along, you'll kind of figure out, those opportunities to monetize and to really build a structure around your brand as you go down the journey.
I love it. I love it. It's so true. And I think it's like, you got to have the curiosity aspect of it too. And that's what you're saying with exploration is just try tons of different things, try tons of different platforms and mediums and really see which of your passions can you truly follow and dive in deeper and actually take the time to just unfold so many aspects of what you're building and what you want to be creating. And that can really, trickle down to such a bigger effect. Kind of transitioning more into, I said earlier about just a little bit on NIL, that's such a hot topic right now. And I think, you look back maybe on your career and say, I wonder what would happen if that was in play as you were started to, build your brand and, especially as you played overseas. But now that it's here and it's, everyone's trying to navigate in their own way. What was your initial reaction when you saw that happen on the summer of 2021?
Yeah, man. Well, this was something that I started talking about probably in like 2017, 2018, when I was starting to transition out of sports. I think around the time the Ed O'Bannon case had really came to light, and that was like the first like big notice of like, well, like the bigger picture was like, well, why aren't these student athletes getting paid for their image and likeness? Like they're on these video games, the universities are posting them on billboards, they're selling their jerseys, like, and these coaches are getting paid millions of dollars. So something right here. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
So
right.
early on, like I was creating content around this. I was on a couple different talk shows. So like by the time it actually happened, it was like we've been waiting for this. You know what I'm saying? Like it was long overdue. Like it wasn't something that this process has been years in the works. It wasn't something that just came overnight. Like there's a ton of people who I know who have been working behind the scenes even before I even got into space. And so just kind of see it come to fruition and knowing the good that could come from NIL, and most importantly, how these athletes can really leverage this opportunity to build businesses, to create some sustainability for themselves during and after their careers. I was hyped for it, man. I was extremely excited, and I think the timing with like impact beyond the game and just trying to be a catalyst for this movement and help athletes navigate this space, man. I think as I said before, it was just long overdue, and I'm excited for what's to come. I mean, it's still kind of the wild wild west, and there's things
Right.
that need to be worked out, but we'll get there. And I think the good is going to outshine the bad when people look back on like how NIL has kind of taken shape within the past initial first couple of years. But I think the upside and the potential is bright for the space for sure.
100%. No, I love everything you said about that, and it's really just empowering these athletes to go out there and build their own brand, build businesses, and what would be your piece of advice, going off that for athletes to not only be building their brand, but also like how can they start building their own businesses? What resources, what tools should they be looking for that can assist them in making that happen?
Great question. There are a number of different companies that are providing education, whether that's around financial literacy, business structure, taxes, because these are the things that athletes have to be aware of, along with like content responsibility. How do you create content online and brand strategy, as we talked about before? So
Right.
I think just tapping in with some of the thought leaders, the people who are talking about this stuff on social media is a good starting point. And then just understanding that it's a long-term game. I think that's really important. A lot of athletes, we've kind of seen, going back to how it's kind of been the world with the wild, wild west, a lot of athletes have kind of tried to take the quick money, and they've kind of shot themselves in the foot by doing so. And so
Right.
I think just having a long-term perspective of how you can't go after every deal. You can't just sign on with any advisor or any agent. So just doing your due diligence, understanding who you are as a person, what's right for you as a person and an athlete is really important. And having that long-term perspective, man, about like your brand is forever. And so don't do anything that's going to tarnish your reputation, or something to jeopardize your athletic career or the opportunity that you're going to have in the future. But yeah,
100%.
there's a ton of things I can say, but it's really just like research, man. Understand that this is very new, and you have to be smart about how you're going about acquiring opportunities.
Yep. No, it's spot on. That's spot on, Malcolm. And then, also kind of building off that, athletes are so used to building relationships with, whether it's social life or their coaches or their teammates. But now they're, at a young age right now with NAL, they're getting the chance to build relationships with brands and big founders, CEOs that might be double their age. How can they go about navigating that in the right way? What lessons and skills can they apply for them to build those long lasting relationships with these brands that now they can actually have that effective communication with?
I think it's about being proactive and being more transformational than you are transactional with these relationships. So understanding that you want to be a value add to whoever you're doing business with, and you want it to make sure that it's mutually beneficial on both ends. Because going back to the saying, like people do business with people that they know, like, and trust. And so your reputation at the end of the day is everything. It's not always about the dollars. It's about, can I do this business with this person for the next 20, 30 years? So you always want to make sure that you're coming to the table that's with something that's fair for both ends, and that you're looking to provide value to whoever that you're getting in bed with. So that's always my take on it, is like seek out these relationships, meet these people, but build genuine connections that's going to be mutually beneficial for both parties.
I love it. Yeah, and that that helps with just their negotiation skills and their due diligence of the research that they're behind that company or brand, and really just going into full effect and saying, how can this be, benefit both parties, and how can it be more long term, like you said. Now, kind of switching a little bit into more of the tech space. I know this is your bread and butter. The Hype Report, it's your newsletter, and it's a phenomenal newsletter. It's at the intersection of Web3 and sports. How do you see, and I know this is something you love talking about, but how do you see blockchain technology, smart contracts, digital collectibles, all of that and more benefiting athletes today?
There's a number of different ways, man. I think we're so early in the space and we're starting to see stuff take shape, month by month as the industry kind of formulates and materializes. But I think about stuff is like athletes being able to tokenize their communities. So building deeper connections with their fan base using blockchain technology, or having token gated access, like on a podcast like we're on right now, is like we
Right.
can have this be token gated, where people who are truly invested in who you are as an athlete, the stuff that you're doing and you're talking about, they can get access to that. So I like to think about Web3 and blockchain from the lens of like leveraging NFTs, crypto tokens, to build more of a deeper relationship with the people who have a vested interest in your career on and off the playing field. Not really as a mechanism for like driving revenue, because I think that's really hard. But there are opportunities where athletes can make money. So there's a number of different lenses to kind of look at this thing. But I think the bigger point in it all is like it's being built as we speak, and that's the most fascinating aspect of it all to me. Is like we have the opportunity to create this lane and to really create new ways for fans to engage with their favorite athletes and their favorite teams. And so from the athlete perspective right now, it's really about, going back to the research, man, like
Right.
understanding how what's shaping out in the space, and reading the Hype Report, reading the stuff that's being put out there that people are
Absolutely.
saying about how this industry is growing and the opportunities that they'll have. There's been a lot of bad news, and
Right.
I think with any form of innovation or any new trend, there's going to be that. But I think when you think about how efficient and effective blockchain is, and some of the underlying characteristics of the technology and how it aligns with sport, there's no doubt in my mind that we'll get to a point where everyone will own it, like digital assets. Everybody will be able to participate in virtual experiences. So it's an exciting time. And I think right now it's just more about athletes doing the research, understanding what's happening day by day in the space, and thinking outside the box of how they can like apply these technologies to their brand and what they're trying to do long term.
Absolutely. No, and I love that. One thing you talked about that I really like is the relationship aspect, because of course it can be a mechanism for revenue, but I think the relationship thing is something that's so much deeper that we can dive into. And I want to hear your perspective on the fan economy, and how will that take form and shape of fans starting to really adopt those Web3 technologies? Because with relationships, you see that fans can have more proximity to their favorite athletes. They can do more events and do different things that gives them access to that maybe they can see behind the scenes of that athlete's day to day. Like there's so much that we could talk about around that, but how do you really see this whole fan economy starting to adopt it in the way that makes sense, that simplifies it, and really allows fans to dive in further?
Yeah. So I think in most sports, man, like fans are not really following the team as much as they're following the athletes. They want to know who their favorite athletes are, like you said, behind the scenes, their daily lives, their routines, and things of that nature. And so that relationship is so strong. It can be so strong, especially when you start to apply different technologies to streamline it and make it more efficient. I think we have to get to a point, especially within like Web3 and the Web3 economy and blockchain as a whole, to where we're making it seamless and uh, having consumers, having fans not even realize they're using blockchain technology. We have to get to a
Right.
point where it's like it's running in the background, but you don't know it's blockchain. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
until we get there, it's going
100%.
to be kind of hard for us to reach mass adoption. And also, I think a barrier to entry within the space is a lot of people not understanding the technology, and people who do, making it hard with the language that we're using around it. So we talk about DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations. Like that's a very difficult
Right.
thing to digest if you don't,
Right.
if you haven't done the research, and that can be
No,
intimidating.
absolutely.
So I think the language has to change, and we have to kind of think about how we're positioning um, these concepts to your everyday person who's not going to do that deep research into how all of this stuff works. So a lot of it is education. A lot of it is just like streamlining the technologies and some of the user interfaces to where people don't even know they're using blockchain, but companies, athletes are able to have that data in the back end, and they're really able to streamline that relationship they have with the end consumer and their audience.
100%. Yeah, and I think that just goes back to everything about simplifying it. Like you said, with the language, making that a lot simpler, streamlining the technologies where, like you said, it's going to be running in the background, and you could be signing up with just an email and password and not even realize, oh, there is Web3 technologies, there's blockchain, and everything else part of that. And I think that's where we're getting into, and we're starting to see that a lot of brands out there are realizing, okay, if they want fans to be engaging with their athletes or so forth, there has to be that streamlined ability where it is simple and effective for people to understand.
Right, 100% not.
And Malcolm, kind of wrapping up here in a couple minutes, but I want to hear more about what is your kind of vision, your big why or mission with your career. What are your plans of how you've done so much in your career and have so many notable awards and things that you've accomplished. Where do you see your career and the vision that you want to make and impact in the world?
Yeah, man. I think right now I struggle to be a long term. I am a long term thinker, but I struggle to figure out like, well, like where am I going to be in the next 5 to 10 years? Because I think life can change so quickly, uh,
Right.
year by year, or even month by month. So for me, it's about am I doing things that I have a genuine interest in? Am I providing value to people? Are they getting value from the stuff that I'm creating and putting out there? And am I enjoying what I'm doing every day, man? That's really what it's about. And so with the hype report, it's like me genuinely following my curiosity for this space and believing in the potential, and helping people who want to learn about this, delivering content that is digestible, that is valuable to them, and that's going to help them become smarter about the space, and hopefully, if you work in space, do your job better. And so that's what it's about for me, man. But I'm really just excited about continuing to grow the readership, and then hopefully maybe funneling that into a community base where people who have been avid follow of the newsletter can build and connect with other people who are as well. And so just excited about continuing to grow day by day, man, and enjoying the process.
That's awesome. I love it. No, I think you're on the right track for everything on that. And kind of wrapping up, but real quick, what are some of your plans if you've done in the past or have in the future and you want to? What are some of your plans of giving back to the community? I know you have the Hype Report, a huge newsletter that really gives back and all that educational info. But is there anything else that you want to do at a scale of really impacting the community?
Uh, Nothing immediately at the moment. But I'm always looking for different ways to provide value. I mean, like to me, it's all about being in service of others.
Yep.
The motto of my high school was AMDG, and it was really men for others. And so I've always kind of had the mindset of like whatever I do or pursue is really about the person on the other end than it is about my personal gain. So it's always opportunities. I'm always looking at opportunities to continue to do great work to impact the community and to give back in any way possible.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. And I think that's such a huge point that even young athletes can take, learn from that right now is that, it's more than just yourself. People look up to you at the sport you play or even off the court or off the field, but it's about, what can you do on a day-to-day basis that of being of service, whether it's helping your teammate out or helping a classmate or, helping someone on the street. How can you be of service and in anything that you're doing at the moment? And really just being grateful for everything that's happening around you. So I think that's just right spot on. Kind of wrapping up with our podcast, Malcolm, I wanted to ask, what are three things or three lessons or pieces of advice that you would pass down and give to this next generation?
Are we talking about specifically athletes or just people in general?
We could do people in general. Anything that you
Okay.
would give to just people in general right now that look up to you as a role model. What would you say as guidance for them?
It reminds me of a question I like to ask other people, which is if you only had three values to instill in your child, what would those three values be? And I've always had that in the back of my mind. The first one would be a good person. I think just like being kind, man, is super underrated. I think not even just in the business context, but just in general, man, we need more empathy in the world. And so being a good person is super important to me. And just like, as we talked about before, just like being in service to other people. And then the next would probably be just be willing to fail. I'm super bullish on trying and failing, like failing forward. And then, as you mentioned before, like being able to pivot, not caring what people say or people think about you, and doing stuff that you have a genuine interest in. So just chasing your passions, and chasing things that you're interested in. But we be willing to kind of move on if things don't work out. And then the last thing I would say is to just believe in yourself and work hard. And that's super cliche. But the most successful people don't ever let anyone tell you that the most successful people don't work hard, because they put in the work, they bust their ass, man. And so I'm
100%.
super bullish on hard work as well, and just believing in whatever you're doing. So that'd probably be the three best things, or pieces of advice that I can give the next generation.
I love it. I love it. Just to rephrase that, you said number one, just be a good person. Always be kind, and I love that. And then you said number two, just be willing to fail and fail forward. Look at Michael Jordan with his famous quote. He failed over and over again, and that's why he's successful. And it stands true for everyone in life. And then you said number three, to believe in yourself and work hard. And I think that wraps up everything. Just any successful person. It all started with an idea in mind, and they believed in themselves, because if they didn't believe in themselves, who would have believed in them? Right. And then they worked hard and actually, manifested that into a reality. So that is all great pieces of advice, awesome insights, and everything you said in this podcast. Everybody go subscribe to the Hype Report. Malcolm Lemmons here for episode 29. Very grateful to have you on this show.
My man, appreciate it, Grant.
Absolutely.